Hey folks, welcome to Beefly Bricks, hope you're all well. In today's video I'm beginning a new project for the channel, and it's something I've been planning for quite a while now actually. I'm building a micro scale Gotham City. This is going to be a long term project, and I have done micro scale building in the past, but this is going to be a much larger build and much more highly detailed. And this all sort of stems from my fascination with Gotham City. It is to me as much a character in the Batman world as any of the heroes and villains. And over the years, various artists and designers have produced their own interpretations on the city layout, and parts of the city have been named and mapped accordingly. However, there are a few differences, and there doesn't seem to be an official version from DC themselves, so I'm using a variety of maps, and I'm also making some logical decisions about where things go myself as well. This transit map is actually one of the best, and to me it gives the clearest definitions and also a good idea of where the bridges, highways and railways are. But before I map out the terrain and build the sea and all that, I'm going to start with making a few buildings for each kind of city area. So this collection of buildings here is the sort of beginnings of my financial district. I've only just started and I'm still coming to a decision on this scale, but I've got a good idea of what I want to achieve. This is of course just a hodgepodge, and I haven't laid anything out or built streets. This is just me assembling the buildings ready to be placed in the future. If you are new to the channel and you want to stay updated on the progress of my Gotham City, then subscribe to the channel. So today I'm not going to rush this first video in this series. I really want to take time to explain my decisions and choices, and this is a project which I really want to enjoy, and the end product I hope will be a really comprehensive, faithful and striking mock of Gotham City. I want to go in depth in my understanding of Gotham and how I think the city developed into how it appears in Batman. My initial inspiration, I suppose, stems from the Batman animated series, which to me is still the absolute zenith of Batman storytelling. I think Paul Dini and Bruce Timm really achieved a tone and look that captures the essence of Batman and Gotham. In the show, Gotham has such a vertical, linear atmosphere with interconnected bridges. The gargoyles and the architecture of the 1890s and early 1900s is ever present, but then there's also a huge influence of the 1950s as well. Watching the show as a kid, I really wanted to believe that Gotham was like a real place. I loved the 60s Batman too, and it was on Channel 4 in the mornings. And I always watched it, and the bright colours and the camp atmosphere was fun to watch, but I was blown away when I saw Tim Burton's take on Gotham City, and of course the animated series. The 60s show used stock footage of LA, and it just didn't look quite right once you'd seen that kind of dark look. This is a concept art painting by Anton Furst for the 1989 Batman movie, and it has stuck with me for years. I think it's beautiful, and it encapsulates the whole mood of the film. Gotham is a high density, high population island city, similar to New York, but even grittier, a myriad of bridges and built up areas where building upwards was the only solution, just like Hong Kong perhaps. The shipping and industry is in decline, and it's trying to reinvent itself, but it can't shake that image of crime and corruption, and the reality for its citizens is that the crime rate is really high. And to me that painting just captures all of that in one image. This is concept art for the Arkham video game, and I really like the atmosphere they created with the lights and the advertising. This idea that yes, there's money in the city, there's money to be made, it's not a lost cause. You know, they still advertise, they still build skyscrapers, you know, they still invest in the city, but crime has become a fact of life. And it's perfectly represented by these sort of narrow, close, dark streets. When Christopher Nolan made his trilogy of Dark Knight films, he heavily referenced Chicago, and he filmed multiple scenes in the city. They famously used Lower Wacker Drive for the tumbler chase scenes, and yeah, to me, Chicago is more in line architecturally with Gotham than, say, New York or San Francisco. The city still has plenty of very old skyscrapers too, and it also has more of a darker tone with Sears Tower and the John Hancock Centre. I know they've changed names these days, but to me it's still Sears Tower. Another interesting thing about Chicago is its grid system. It was carefully laid out and planned in the 1800s, and interestingly, this system has some of its origins in Glasgow. Glasgow city fathers back in the day came up with a far more organised and regimented planning system for the centre. Cities and towns in Scotland had lots of winding and curved rows of streets that were often susceptible to the spread of fire, and the centre of Glasgow had been redesigned with a grid system, and this plan quickly became successful, and it spread to other cities and became the norm in the colony cities in Canada, Australia and the US. Glasgow was also the centre of the world when it came to shipbuilding, and I'm not going to go into a history lesson, but it's well known for building ships, and it dominated the city, and its entire heritage is based on building the best ships in the world. The resulting wealth of the city is owed to the shipbuilding industry. Coal and steel were the other two industries which went hand in hand with shipbuilding, and the wealth they created is all around the city, with huge monumental public buildings and infrastructure, and of course there are huge tower blocks and the fine suburbs. Glasgow now has many fine examples of modern architecture and lots of glass-fronted semi-skyscrapers interspersed with larger neoclassical buildings from the 1800s. There are huge factories, skyscrapers, churches and high-density residential towers all in the same neighbourhoods. Glasgow used to have huge areas of city centre deprivation and poverty, and lots of run-down industrial buildings which were slowly being redeveloped. Now it has transformed the city centre and the former industrial areas, but there are huge areas of social deprivation within the large council schemes and the city suburbs. And why am I talking about this in a Lego video? Well, to me, this is exactly the same story as Gotham. A former industrial giant, a post-industrial city which is in the midst of finding a new direction in the late 20th and early 21st century, dealing with high unemployment, endemic violent crime, a big drug problem and local government corruption. So that's the background to Gotham, I kinda think. Yeah, so Glasgow Cathedral has kind of inspired my interpretation for Gotham's cathedral. It's blackened by the pollution and it's a kind of giant black mega church. I didn't want to copy the 1989 version, but I certainly gave it some height and I've tried to give it some realism and scale. I want to compete for space within the skyscrapers surrounding it. The Gotham City Hall is not huge and I wanted to do it in white so it stands out. There's a neoclassical nod with its columns, but I don't want it to look too similar to the Capitol building or anything like that. And this is a good example of a kind of industrial looking skyscraper. I've done a few of these wedge shaped ones which really gives the city more texture when it's placed. I like this sort of small commercial buildings. Chicago has loads like this. It's a fun build too, with a studs on side construction. This is one of the larger commercial buildings in the financial district. It's a really simple design and I've used as many of those black wedges as I could. It looks great and really easy to build as well. I really want to give as much texture and different shapes and some kind of realism as possible, and this apartment block is a really unique design. I'm not quite sure what you call those bricks with the kind of teeth things, but yeah, I've got lots of those spare, so I used them a lot here. Another monolithic financial building, I really tried to make a modern and unusual shape. I saw a building like this in Dubai a few years ago and that gave me the inspiration for this. You can see the studs on side construction and it's quite simple really, but it looks really cool. So it's a good start. I'm going to keep producing buildings. The initial idea is to fill up these two base plates with buildings, and on another two base plates I'll start the island layout with the highway and railways in place first. I'll do that in accordance with the maps, and I've got to get the bridges in place and link up all the roads, so the maps are quite handy for that. And then there's sort of deciding on where exactly key locations like Blackgate Isle and its prison are, Chinatown, Little Italy, there's Old Gotham, of course there's the financial district, And do I include things like the Narrows? And where's Crime Alley and Arkham Asylum going to be? So there's a lot to kind of think about and consider. There's places like Bloodhaven and Burnside as well, and of course Wayne Tower and Wayne Manor. I'm also going to give the Gotham villains some locations as well, like Joker Land, the Iceberg Lounge for the Penguin, and the Falcone and the Maroney family have businesses. There's maybe the Riddler's apartment building and Harley and Poison Ivy. Yeah, you get the idea. There's a lot to think about. Oh, and Gotham Police HQ as well. So yeah, it's going to be a massive project and I'm really excited about it. I have seen one other fantastic micro-scale Gotham on Pinterest, but it was much smaller and it wasn't laid out in the way that I intend on doing so I hope I can make something unique, and I really want to capture the unmistakable look of Gotham. So I will be posting regular videos updating you on the progress of the city, and this will run alongside the usual videos I do. And hopefully they won't be as full on as this one in future. I did go into the influence of Chicago and Glasgow today, but in future I will be showing you more the city itself, the buildings, the layout and any problems I encounter. Thanks for watching today, and I really appreciate it if you made it until the end. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notifications bell so you stay up to date, and I'll catch you in the next video. Bye!